In part 2 of the video, we're going to work through the word problems at the end of the Unit 2 exam. A couple of these problems had to do with proportion and percentages, and so we need to make sure we're reading the problem carefully to see what we're trying to find the percentage of. In the first problem, number 14 here, we're told that there are 910 more seats out of 1,400. And the key here is that this is the number of seats that increase. So 910 is the increase in number of seats, and we want to know what percent will they increase. So we're trying to convert this 910 seats into a percentage. So to do that, we compare to the total. And so this proportion will tells us how many seat increase there is with respect to 1,400 seat total. And so if we convert that to percent, or percent means per 100, that would tell us a way of thinking about that number as a number out of for every 100 seats. And so to do this, we just do the division. So 910 out of 1,400 is 0.65. And so that's what we refer to as a proportion. A number between 0 and 1 we refer to as a proportion of the total seats that our increase accounts for. And then to change that into a percentage, we just multiply by 100. And it's always by 100 to convert from a proportion to a percent. So 65% of the 1,400 seats is the increase. So our answer is 65%. And so what that means is we can think of this increase as that for every 100 seats that were there, they're adding 65 additional seats. So in 15, this is a hard problem to read. It's just got so much going on in it. Nothing really matters in this problem until they tell us the algebra formula that they're talking about. So all of the problems like this, we're going to start off with an algebra formula. Most of them don't have quite this much explanation before they tell us the formula. But notice that that formula has 5 variables in it. It has G, M, F, H, and Q. So it has a whole bunch of variables. And so what they're going to do after they've told us the relationship, they're going to tell us the value of a lot of these variables. So down here, they're telling us the value of M, they're telling us the value of H, they're telling us the value of Q, and they're telling us the value of G, the final grade. Remember, that's capital G is the final grade. So there, of the 5 variables that I put a yellow box around, they're telling us 4 of them, and they're asking us for the value of F. So in this kind of problem, the first thing I need to do is rewrite my equation using the numbers that I'm given. So instead of G, I have 77. I have 0.30 times M. So instead of M, I have 70. 0.40 times F, but F is the thing I don't know, so I have to leave that as F. 0.15 times H, and I'm told that H is 100. So instead of H, I'm using 100. And finally, 0.15 times Q, and I'm told that Q is also 100. So instead of Q here, I have 100. So those 4 pieces of information they gave me just tell me what the variables are. So in all problems of this type on these unit exams, you're going to have a relationship given, and that'll have several variables in it, but you're going to be told the value of all but one of those variables. And so that then changes this into an algebra problem that only has one unknown. And I can solve that like all the other problems. I would simplify the simplify the right-hand side. 0.3 times 70 is 21. 0.15 times 100 is 15. So when I do all the multiplication on the right-hand side, I'll have that. And so I'll have 77 is equal to 51 plus 0.4f. And this means that subtracting 51 from both sides, 26 is 0.4f. And now I can just divide both sides both sides by 0.4. And again, that's not so bad if you have a calculator, but 26 divided by 0.4 is 65. So the answer, so we have a 65 is needed on the final exam to have a final grade of 77 in this class. Number 16 is another problem with percentages, and this goes the other way. In this case, we're told that the shares have fallen in value by 45%. So there's a 45% decrease from the original value of $40. So in this case, I need to change the percent. It's telling me that I'm going to lose 45 cents on every dollar. That's what 45% would mean. I'm losing 45 cents on every dollar. And I have to figure out what that is in terms of dollars. So 45% increase, it's 45% decrease. I'll just write over here, 45% of $40 I can figure out by using the proportion. Remember, the proportion version of 45% is 0.45 times 40, and 0.45 times 40 is $18. But notice that that is the decrease. So 45% of 40 is the decrease from 40. Because the 45% was the amount of decrease, then the $18 is a decrease. That is not what they're actually asking. They could have said, how many dollars was this decrease? And the answer would be 18. But they don't. They ask for the current value of the stock. So I have to make sure that after I've done the calculation, I've paid attention to what my calculation tells me and how that relates to the actual question. The current value of the stock then is $40, the original price, minus the decrease. So the current value of the stock is $32. Is that 32? No, that's 22. Sorry. Oh, geez. $22. Just when I think I don't need a calculator. I should have used a calculator. So 40 minus 18 is 22. That's the current value of the stock. On this page, we have a few more word problems. 17 tells us about elevation, and the main thing here is to pay attention to the question. Elevation being negative means below sea level. So if we have, if I have sea level, then this lake so Lake Eyre, whatever it's called, is 52 feet below sea level. And this is saying I'm standing 609 feet above that lake. So 609 feet above Lake Eyre. And so in terms of my number line, if I was at sea level, I'd have to go 52 feet down and then 609 feet up. So the result of that is just the sum of 609 plus negative 52. And that's, whatever that is, 557 feet above sea level. And so that's just a matter of changing the description of what's going on in words into arithmetic. There's no actual algebra problem here. Number 18 is about proportional reasoning. And so we see we have a number of biscuits and we want to relate that to cups of milk. And we're told the relationship between biscuits and milk up here. So for every 16 biscuits I want to make, I need 3 cups of milk. Notice that the question doesn't ask about flour. And so this extra information that I'm being told here about how much flour is involved is just is irrelevant. It doesn't have anything to do with this question. So I'll just cross out the information that I know I don't really need so it doesn't distract me. So the idea here is I have 16 biscuits for every, I get 16 biscuits for every 3 cups of milk. And so if I want to make 144 biscuits, I can think of this as a batch. So one batch of 16 biscuits, I need 30 cups of milk. So the question is, how many batches do I need? And so to do that, I just need to divide. So whatever 144 over 16 is, that's how many batches I need to make. 144 over 16 is, who am I kidding? That's 9. So I need 9 batches of biscuits to have 144, but 9 batches of biscuits needs 3 times 9 cups of milk. If every batch needs 3 cups of milk, then 9 batches is going to need 27 cups of milk. So that's how we can deal with proportional reasoning. You can do that as an algebra problem. If you want to, you could say, so number 19 is another example where you're being told things that may or may not be useful. We're being told about number of women and men separately. And so we want to make sure we read the question carefully and are willing to throw away information that's not really important. To see what's important, we really should look at the last question. What percent of the whole class scored a passing grade? So to do that, we need the number passing over the number in the whole class. And so that question has nothing to do with who's a woman and who's a man. And you have to read the question carefully to know that, but that's the final question has nothing to do with how the women and men break out. So that means that number passing is the total number passing. So 2 women and 15 men passed. That's a total of 17 people. And 24 plus 38, 62 people in the whole class. So the proportion of the class who passed is 17 out of 62. And as a proportion, that is 0.2742. Give myself a few decimal places. That's my proportion. I need to multiply that by 100 to make it a percentage. So that's 27.42%. And they ask for just to the nearest whole percent. So my answer would be 27%. Number 20 threw a few people, but the idea, number 20, it's not a word problem, but it is a problem where we want to go through our solution method without worrying about the fact that that everything may not be in terms of numbers. So if we're solving for y, that means we're going to follow the strategy of getting things with a y on it to one side and things without a y to the other side. So from the starting point of 3x plus 4y equals 2, my first step would be to subtract 3x from both sides, because that will make the left-hand side have only y's in it. And again, I'm solving for y. I do have to know that. So on the right-hand side, the weird thing about these is that on the right-hand side, I really can't do anything. So having algebra over there means that I'm very limited in how I can simplify that. So I don't have to do the arithmetic. 2 minus 3x is just 2 minus 3x. There's nothing else I can say about it. So now I've achieved separating the stuff with y's in it from the stuff that does not have y in it. And so my last step would be just divide both sides by 4. And so on the left-hand side, I'd have a y, and on the right-hand side, I'll have just divide by 4. And that's all you have to do. There's no reason to simplify this. When we do have a use for this kind of process, we will rewrite this in another form to simplify it. But it's because there's a specific purpose for that simplification. In this problem, there's no reason to prefer this form over any other form. So this would be my final answer. Whatever I get here is my answer. 16 biscuits is to 3 cups of milk as 144 biscuits is to X cups of milk. So if you don't mind cross multiplication problems, this is what the algebra really is doing here. And then if we cross multiply these numbers, we end up with 16 times X is 144 times 3. And if you solve that, then you will get that X is 27. So you can set it up as an algebra problem, just thinking about it in terms of proportions, or you can think of it in terms of batches of biscuits.